Broncos country, no, the Broncos should not take a running back in the first round of the 2025 NFL draft. I've been going back and forth with a bunch of people on Twitter, and I said, you know what, screw it. We're going to make a video today talking about why. Why should the Broncos look at other positions before they look at running back in the first round of this year's draft? I think it's pretty simple. It's pretty logical, but I want to know you guys' thoughts. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to break it down, and let me know below in the comments what you guys think. But before we get into it, guys, if you love Denver sports content and if you love the NFL draft, check out some of the other videos, see what you like, hit that subscribe button. It'll really help me out. I'm on a mission to get to 1,000 subs before the draft. Please, I got 5 weeks to do it. It'll really help me out. And leave a comment, man. I love interacting with you guys. I appreciate all the support and the love all the time. Even those people that disagree with me or they're talking a little bit of crap, I dig it, man. It makes my day. It really, really does. So please be sure to do that. All right. I appreciate y'all. So let's get right into this. The Broncos should not draft a running back in the first round of the 2025 NFL draft. And why is that? Well, because first of all, even though running back is our biggest need, the Broncos still have a lot of other needs, right? We still have a lot of other holes to fill, whether it be at depth or whether just bring playmakers. I like to build teams out through the trenches, right? And even though right now on paper, we've got a really solid defensive line and one of the best O-lines in the NFL, it doesn't mean that it's always going to be that way. It's always going to remain, that straightforward. You also got a lot of question marks, right? Are we going to extend Zach Allen? What are we going to do with John Franklin Myers? These are very relevant questions to know. What are you going to do in the draft? If there's a defensive lineman, right, at the end of the first round available at 20, give you some examples like a Derek Harmon or a Walter Nolan, and you feel like they can be very, very elite impact players for you, even if that means they're not going to be full-time starters until 2026, it's a really smart move. And injuries happen. If John Franklin Myers goes down, do you feel very confident in Malcolm Roach being the starter? Same on the other side with Zach Allen or Ioma Owuzurike or whatever it might be. And we can go through the entire roster and talk about these different examples. But just because running back is our biggest need, it doesn't mean that we have to take one in the first round. In fact, I will tell you it's not really a smart decision based off of history and based off of the type of scheme that Sean Payton runs. So let's talk about the history first, all right? When you look at historically, the running backs that are taken in the first round versus all other rounds, like you take your list of the best running backs ever, they are drafted in the most random spots. There's no correlation saying first round running backs have the most success. It's just not very true at all. You see, my favorite running back of all time, Terrell Davis, 6th round pick, right? Derrick Henry, 2nd round pick. When you're talking about, Josh Jacobs was somebody drafted in the 2nd round. Alvin Kamara was a 3rd round pick for the New Orleans Saints. Now, you do have a lot of elite running backs that are, 1st round picks, like Saquon Barkley, but he's on a 2nd team. So that's another aspect that you have to look at too, is running backs are rarely given a 2nd contract from the original team that drafted them in the 1st round. And if you look at the last 15 years, I'm doing this based off of memory. So if I'm wrong, which I'm 95% sure that I'm not, let me know in the comments below. But in the last 15 Super Bowl champions, the only teams that won a Super Bowl with a 1st round running back that they drafted in the 1st round were the Chiefs with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who didn't even play at all. Like, that barely played that year. I don't think he played at all in the Super Bowl. And the New England Patriots with Sony Michel, who had a few carries in their postseason run. He was just a very minimal impact player for them as well. Right? So it doesn't necessarily mean, Broncos draft the running back in the 1st round. Now they're going to become contenders, but it just shows that there's a lot of other, like, running back is not a very important position. It's become a little bit more important than what the league was treating it prior, but you can find a lot of guys that can do the job and be productive for you, albeit for a short term, but you can typically find those guys, and you can find it in free agency, undrafted guys, obviously in the draft. You can make the argument that over the past 8 years, the best running back that the Broncos had was, oh my God, I'm totally blanking. We signed him like in the middle of the year, and it'll come back to me. But it wasn't anybody that we drafted it, and it wasn't anybody of significance. So wish I had that with me, man, but I kind of went off the cuff there. All right. So also, it's important to talk about Sean Payton and his scheme. First of all, before we get into his scheme, let's talk about his tendencies a little bit, right? So let's go ahead and look at the history of Sean Payton. All right. So when you're looking at it like this, what kind of how does Sean Payton value the running back position overall, right? Sean Payton, first and foremost, he's always been a running back by committee type of a guy. He just has been. That's what he's always done throughout his entire career. And let me copy and paste what I have over on this screen, plop it over here for you guys down here, so we can take a look at that here later. But when you look at Sean Payton's history, back in 2006, he took Reggie Bush in the first round, second overall. Obviously, Reggie Bush was one of those like can't miss prospects. Sean Payton was also very, his first year in the NFL. He didn't really have much GM experience. Maybe he learned something from this, because after that, he only took a running back in the first round once, and it was in the end of the first round with Mark Ingram. But then he took Antonio Pittman in the fourth round, ended up cutting Antonio Pittman before the season even started in 2007, because Pierre Thomas was an undrafted gem that he balled out with down here. You can see that. He took Alvin Kamara in the first round. He took Mark Ingram in the first round. He took Alvin Kamara in the third round. He drafted Boston Scott in the sixth round. That was his tenure with New Orleans. And then with the Broncos last year, they took Audric Estime in the fifth round. So he's shown that he's willing to take running backs in the first round, and he's willing to show that he's take running backs later or even as undrafted guys. The most successful running back that Sean Payton's had, arguably, in his tenure was Alvin Kamara, who was a third round pick. It doesn't necessarily mean if he takes one in the first, it's not going to make sense. But what's really important is that Sean Payton has always been someone who has had a running back by committee approach ever since he entered the head coaching ranks in 2006. Deuce McAllister was the power back early on. And then injuries led to an increased roles for Reggie Bush and Pierre Thomas. Bush was more of the receiving guy. Pierre Thomas was more of the in-between the tacklers guy. That was in the first 2006 to 2010 era. Then 2011 to 2016, you had a mix of Pierre Thomas, Darren Sproles, Mark Ingram, Chris Ivory. God, isn't that an old school name? And Kyrie Robinson. Pierre Thomas and Darren Sproles were very much the pass-catching running backs during that time. And Ingram was more of the, early down, run between the tackles guy. Like I said, he could still catch the ball, but they always had a split approach. It rarely ever happened that he had a dominant 3-down running back. In fact, I think in his entire head coaching career, which is like 16, 17 years, whatever it might be at this point, a running back has only had 20 plus carries 5 times. Right? So whether you think that that's like done by him or whatever your opinion on that is, I think it's a smart approach, but whatever your opinion on that is, it's just the facts. And that makes the reliance or need to have an elite running back lessened a little bit more, right? Because listen, dudes, like if I took a running back in the first round and it's Omarion Hampton, someone that projects to be a third down bruising running back, feed the beast the ball, I don't want to give him 20, 30 plus touches a game. No doubt about it, all the time, especially in those games where you're trying to control the clock. And it's just, that's not how Sean Payton operates as an offensive play caller. He also very, very much relies on running backs to be good in pass protection. It's the reason why Javonte Williams couldn't get off the field last year, because he was a really good pass protector. And so you got to look at these running backs and say, if they can't pass pro right away, they ain't going to play much. They're going to be early down players for the most part, Omarion Hampton specifically. So that's why, if you're asking me in this draft, a running back like a Travion Henderson fits Sean Payton's scheme much better than Omarion Hampton does. So when I do my ranks, I talk about like who I think is the best just in general. And then I talk about who I think is the best, and I rank them for the Broncos' sake, because in running back, it's extremely important to distinguish the two, because it's really about what type of running back are you looking for. And this draft is filled with a lot of guys, a lot of running backs that really do fit Sean Payton's scheme and Sean Payton's, just the history and what he likes to get out of his running backs to a T. But they're not really first-round guys, with the exception of Ashton Genty, obviously. But if you're asking me, like Travion Henderson, LaQuint Allen, Rashard Smith, those guys fit Sean Payton's scheme better than Omarion Hampton, Quinshon Judkins do, in my opinion, just based off of what he likes to see. Some of it for pass protection reasons, some of it for pass catching reasons, and some for both. And it just doesn't ultimately make sense. Another thing is because of how deep this particular draft class is, right? You've got two running backs, and you're talking about consensus. You got two running backs that have a first round grade, but you have anywhere from 6 to 9 running backs with day 2 grades, second to third round grades, right? And then in a lot of other positions like wide receiver or with defensive line, it's kind of the opposite. You've got quite a bit more with first round grades, but then you don't really have a lot with second, third, fourth round grades, right? It's kind of split. So you're thinking to yourself, all right, if the Broncos were to take an elite first round graded player at a different position in the first round, they still have a very, very high chance of being able to get one of those, really good round, day 2 type of running backs later. Whereas if you flipped it, the opposite's true, right? So are you going to sacrifice getting a really good defensive lineman or a really solid tight end or maybe a good, offensive lineman or linebacker, whatever the other position may be? You're going to sacrifice getting a really good one of those for an elite running back that you can maybe get another running back in the second or third round, that the drop off is not going to be that significant. That's kind of how I break that down. I hope that makes a lot of sense. I probably should have given y'all a visual because I had a really good one when I was interacting with CU Andy and a couple of the other guys in the Discord chat, but it all made a lot of sense. Drafting running backs in the first round rarely pays off. It rarely makes sense. Whereas if you can get elite players at very high value positions, such as O-line, D-line, pass rusher, obviously quarterback, that's not relevant to us this year, you're going to get a lot more value for your money. So, there's that. Another thing is with this draft class is like, it's going to be all about how each team grades their backs. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if Sean Payton and George Payton had 5 running backs with the first round grade that suited their needs. But they also know that the general consensus of the league might not feel that way, and they can get a first round graded running back in the second round easily, or they can move up and get one. There's just a lot of different cases that go into that. But in the first round, you want to be able to find a guy that's a cornerstone piece for your team for a long, long time, right? You look at the 2 first round draft picks that George Payton's had are PS2 and Bo Nix. 10 out of 10. Nailed them both, right? You got your cornerstone franchise cornerback, and obviously what I feel like is going to be your franchise quarterback in Bo Nix. That's how you nail it. You get yourself a franchise running back. First of all, that term doesn't really exist. And secondly, it's like, okay, but for how long? You're drafting a guy at a position where much higher chance that he's going to get injured, much higher chance he's going to be splitting carries with another running back, and much higher chance that he's not going to get a second contract from this team. So you're going to have him for a short period of time anyways. So for all those different reasons, the Broncos should look elsewhere in the first round of the NFL draft, other than they should look outside of running back. But let me preface by saying this. If the Broncos took Omarion Hampton, I'd be pumped up. I'd be really excited. In the back of my mind, I'll know, probably not the smartest decision, but I'm going to be excited because I love running back position, man. I do. It's probably my favorite position outside of quarterback. I love being able to watch these dudes play. I think having a good run game and being able to control the clock is unbelievably important. And you can see a lot of them right off the bat, right? Whereas when you draft the left tackle, even though it's a very smart pick, you're not really looking forward to seeing the left tackle play on every play. But running backs, I love it. So I'm going to be excited, but I just don't think it's the smart move for the Broncos overall. I think that we should look elsewhere. Some of my favorite guys in the NFL draft for the Denver Broncos this year at 20, realistically, is Matthew Golden. I think he's an elite type of a prospect, somebody that can be a very, very good wide receiver and would arguably be the best wide receiver the Broncos have within the first year or so. I love Derek Harmon. I love Walter Nolan. I do love Colson Loveland. I think we should still add to that room, but that could be somewhere we don't have to press the issue, depending on the kind of tight end that you need now that we have Evan Ingram. That kind of changes things. I love Nicky Manwari. He would be intriguing at 20, even though we signed Talanoa Hufanga. He just seems like one of those guys that's such an impactful defensive player. And, with Hufanga's injury history, you might be really glad that you got somebody like him, right? So those are just a couple guys, really, to name a few. We're going to end up seeing what ultimately does happen. I do think the Broncos should look at trading back a little bit if the opportunity, presents itself. And then, if you end up trading back a little bit, acquiring yourself another second-round pick, and then you take Omarion Hampton at 27, let's say. But now you have 2 second-round picks. That's something that could make a lot more sense as well. So there's a lot of different ways that this could all go. But I want to know you guys' thoughts below. Should the Broncos take a running back in the first round? If so, let me know why. If not, also let me know why. And let me know who are some of your favorite running back prospects in this draft. I appreciate y'all tuning in, man. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Don't forget to spend time with those people that you love the most. And until the next time, go Broncos and peace out, baby.